slave to our freedom.
The young brother was downright eloquent with his misinformed soliloquy. He said using nigger affectionately among ourselves takes the negativity out of the word, but that no other race of people can use it ever but us. And you thought that kind of reasoning existed only in the Twilight Zone. Then again, the Twilight Zone was a TV show, and the plight of Black America is tragic reality. Somebody said the revolution would not be televised. They didn't say anything about our devolution, which is well documented.
Islam, inconstancy is powerful in the heart of man. Intemperance sweat it whither it will. Despair engrowtheth much of it, and fear proclaim it. Behold, I sit unraveled therein, but vanity is beyond them all. Weep not therefore at the calamities of the human state. Rather laugh at his follies. In the hands of a man addicted to vanity, life then is but a shadow of a dream. The hero, the most renowned of human character, what is he but the bubble of this weakness? The public is unstable and ungrateful. Why should the man of wisdom endanger himself for fools? At this time, I recite the Moorish American prayer. Allah, the Father of the universe, the Father of love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. Allah is my protector, my guide, and my salvation, by night and by day, through his holy prophet, Drew Ali. Amen. First off, I'd like to rise, rocking my soul in the bosom of Abraham, giving praise to Allah, the author, the creator, the governor of the world, almighty, eternal, and incomprehensible, the one who stretcheth forth the heaven with his hands, who have described with his fingers the courses of the stars, who set it bounds to the ocean that it cannot pass, and said to the stormy winds, be still. I'd like to give honor to Allah's holy and illustrious prophet, Noble Drew Ali. I'd like to give honor to Prophet Noble Drew Ali because it was he who reached down into the watery grave of hatred, slander, lewdness, murder, theft, and everything that harms. I'd like to give honor to the forerunner to the Prophet Noble Drew Ali, Marcus Mosiah Garvey. I'd like to give honor to Marcus Mosiah Garvey because this brother said, up, up, you mighty race, you can accomplish what you will. I'd like to give honor to all officials in the Moorish Science Temple of America. I'd like to give honor to our two flags, the flag of our origin and the flag of our birth. And honor to our charter that gives us the right to function in these United States and throughout the world. I'd like to give honor to all literature pertaining to Islam in the Moorish Science Temple of America. I'd like to give a special honor to Temple 2 here in Portland, Oregon for our wills and our ways. And as I say that, I see our growth and I see our development. And last but not least, I'd like to give honor to effort because so many of us don't even try. At this time, I'd like to read from the Moorish Holy Quran, the book of the seven seals that none was able to open and read from its sacred pages the messages of purity and love. Today, in this government, we're celebrating their holiday, their national holiday, and they call it Mother's Day. Here in the Moorish Science Temple of America, because this is the Moorish voice, we have our own holidays, just like the Chinese have Chinese Christmas. So in the Moorish Science Temple of America, we have our own holidays. And during this time of year, our brothers and sisters do not partake in what is known as Mother's Day. And the reason why that is because we have our own holidays. And we have a day that we celebrate in honor of our women. So at this time, I want to read from the Moorish Holy Quran. And I want to read a verse. And I'm going to read from the chapter 20. And the title of the chapter that I'm going to read is Holy Instructions and Warnings for All Young Men. And the verse that I'm going to read and elaborate on is verse 4. And verse 4 reads on this wise. The fountain of health, which must supply the stream of pleasure, shall quickly be dried up, and every spring of joy shall be exalted. Thus we just had a reading of the Moorish Holy Quran, divinely prepared by our holy prophet Noble Drew Ali for our earthly and our divine salvation. I want to talk about this verse that I just read. I'm going to read it again. Verse 4 in chapter 20. Sisters, I want the sisters to go back and look at this because I'm going to explain it to you today. And right now, the title of this broadcast is False Gods. So we might be putting God before the great God Allah. See, because Allah is God, but God don't have to be Allah. Sometimes our car is our God. A woman's vagina is our God. Clothes is our God. But there's no God but Allah, and Noble Drew Ali is his prophet. So we're going to read this again. It says, the fountain of health, which must supply the stream of pleasure, shall quickly be dried up, and every spring of joy shall be exalted. You know, most of my friends that I talk to today, especially those that's 65, especially those that's 65 and over, you know, they're married. And in their relationships with their wife, they don't even have an intercourse relationship anymore because, like the prophet just said, the fountain of health, which must supply the stream of pleasure, shall quickly be dried up. And now that the day is Mother's Day, I need to talk to you sisters because you need to look at this. And this is something that you need to talk to your children about. Moreover, it's talking about your son. You need to talk to your son about this verse that you Ali just gave us because we see in our older brothers that the fountain of health, which must supply the stream of pleasure, shall quickly be dried up. And it's dried up because you go over and over and over and over, and it's going to dry up. Sometimes you might take a sister by the hand, and when you take her by the hand, she might dance 4 times, 5 times, 6 times, but the more you give her, the more she wants. So this is a chapter that we need to look at because most of our brothers, especially those that's older, we dried up. We dried up because we done taken on some concepts and some ideologies that's not a part of ours. So today, we're talking about the woman. Not Mother's Day, but we're going to talk about the woman. I'm going to start off with a brother by the name of Melvin Ritchie. Melvin Ritchie is from right here in Portland, Oregon. And he have a wife named Sharon Ritchie. She's right here in Portland, Oregon. And they have a great relationship. But they're married. But before they got married, Sharon asked Melvin something. And she said, the way you answer this, Melvin, it will determine if you and I get married. And she asked him, there are so many different nationalities around, but she asked him about a particular nationality. She said, have you ever been with a woman of this particular nationality? And he said, no. And when he told Sharon no, she said that now we could get married because she is of the spirit of our forefathers and foremothers. So now, I'm going to get back into that. It was a brother that I met years ago named Earl Coleman Bey. And me and Earl Coleman Bey was talking in the temple one day because we was talking about the flesh and we was talking about the spirit. And he was telling the temple that his mother, because he's much older than me too, he was telling the temple that his mother had got in a relationship with a brother, an older brother, a man, an older man. And she said as the relationship went on for a little while, he began to ask her some things that they talk about in France. And one of them was a French tickler. And when he shared that with that brother's mother, what she did was she looked up in her cabinet and all of the dishes that was in that cabinet, she took them all out, threw them in the trash, and cut him off. And that was because he was bringing something else new to the table that wasn't a part of our forefathers and our foremothers. Now, let me go to something that everybody talk about, the Immaculate Conception, because this is dealing with the woman. And dealing with the Immaculate Conception, it said that Jesus was born of virgin birth. Now we know that Jesus' father, Joseph, and his mother Mary was a part of the Essene Brotherhood. This was the brotherhood in the East of those that lived according to the Word of God. The Essene Brotherhood came into manifest is when Herod wanted to kill all the babies and Jesus had to flee to Egypt land. They called for Jesus and John to come to Egypt land. So now, when they called them to come to Egypt land, there was a brother by the name of Elihu, a part of the Essene Brotherhood, a sister named Salome, a part of the Essene Brotherhood. They took them in. Because you know when Jesus had to flee the Egypt land, it's because Herod wanted to kill all the babies. So now we're talking about the Immaculate Conception. And Immaculate Conception, it says that Joseph and Mary had a child. And the child's name was Jesus. And we are taught in the church that Jesus was born of virgin birth from the perspective that Mary and Joseph did not have sexual relationship. Now, a lot of people believe that. They told me that. It was on my mind. I'm thinking about that all the time. They said that, and I said, man, something's wrong with this. And then a friend of mine, who was a preacher in the church and a devout Protestant, he had to go to Alaska to the pipeline for about 3 years and was sending his money back home. And he loved God. Man, this brother was in God. He quoted all the chapters and all of the Psalms and everything. So when he come back home, his wife was pregnant, and then she had child. And when you come home, he said, baby, we have a blessing. Say, God has blessed us tremendously. He has given us a child. And our child is just like Jesus, born of virgin birth. Say, see what God can do? We can't say. He said, oh, no, this don't make some sense to me. He said, now, I had this understanding. I believed it. But now I'm coming back home from Alaska with all this money, and you telling me that that's my baby. I don't believe that, darling. I believe everything in the Bible, but I don't believe that. So he come and talked to me about it. And I said, well, this is what was given to me in the Moorish Science Temple of America. He's a sheik now. it was told to me that Jesus, mother and father, was righteous. Mary was a righteous woman. Joseph was a righteous man, a part of the Essene brotherhood, and they lived the law of God. They tried to do what God said do. They wanted to be in this world, but not of this world. And the things of this world had no rule over them. So both of them was walking with God. So they had a child. The child's name was Jesus. Jesus means justice. And justice is dealing upright, equal, and fair. And if they have a child, this child has to be born of virgin birth. And the reason why the child is born of virgin birth, because it comes through an uncursed vessel. It didn't come through a vessel of Negro. Didn't come through a vessel of color. Didn't come through a vessel of black or Afro-American. It came through a vessel of love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice, hooking you back up with the family of nations. So this is what is meant outside of the Christian world when you begin to talk about the virgin birth and marriage. So now all our sisters, we're thinking about the virgin birth. And we believe that. But you know, they had a song, and the song was Family Reunion. And in this family reunion, it would always talk about grandma. Now, you remember grandma back in the days? Now, I can talk about grandma back in the days because I'm a baby boomer. I come up in that era of time. I'm a war veteran. I'm a Vietnam veteran. So I come up during that particular time. And when you begin to talk about grandma, I'm going to tell you something. When I was coming up, I was embarrassed of my mother and my aunts. What I mean by being embarrassed is because all of them wore orthopedic shoes. They wore all them old folks' Compans. And I was embarrassed because all of my friends' mothers were the same age as my grandmother would have been. But I missed my blessing. I didn't see the blessing in it. I didn't see the wisdom that was given to me. I have a friend of mine out of Washington, D.C., has a barbershop named Bernard Fernandez. And Bernard Fernandez's mother had a pass phone. And when you went to the funeral was in Washington, D.C. at a church called Isle of Patmos Baptist Church on Rhode Island Avenue. And when you go into that church, from the left all the way to the right, it has up there, you know, who founded the church. And when you see up on the top, it says Hillard Simonton is the one that founded the church of that place. So that is my aunt's husband. So all of my life, I never heard my aunts cuss. I never heard my aunts drink. I never seen my aunt smoke. And they was always in the church on that Sunday. So, and they was a part of that ether. So now I'm beginning to look at it because you call it Mother's Day. So now I'm looking at the character as it was in the day, and I'm looking at the character as it is right now. And it's a different character. We don't have that spirit of our grandmothers anymore. We don't have that spirit of our great-grandmothers anymore. Because when you look at our mothers and when you look at our great-grandmothers, they wearing dresses shorter than what the dollar is wearing. So really, we're getting further and further and further away from the customs, the culture, the heritages, and the traditions of our forefathers. So now we talk about Mother's Day, and on this day, most of the brothers and sisters I know, they cry. They feel bad because of where we are today as a people. So now I can get ready to get into my subject matter. You know, in the Moorish Science Temple, our women, the women in the Moorish Science Temple of America does something that no other women and no other Islamic organization, no other organization allowed does. And what is that? We wear a turban, but they wear a pin right in the middle of the turban. Now you see how this look here? You see how the star and the crescent is? you know, the crescent represents woman. The star represents man. But whenever you see in the Moorish Science Temple of America, the star and the crescent, the star is all the way up top because that's talking about me coming out the womb of a woman. So now when you begin to talk about the pen represents the third eye, because the third eye is an ether that the sister have that a brother don't have. A brother has 9 holes in his body. And we are taught in certain parts of the Moorish Science Temple of America that those 9 holes represent the 9 planets in the universe. Going back to this is the ark, this is the temple, this is all of that. But the sister have an extra hole in her body. And that hole is the all-seeing eye, that third eye. Now, when you begin to talk about the third eye, it takes you back into something called that a woman have. God gave woman intuition. He gave the woman intuition, but he gave man the intelligence to be able to interpret her intuition. So now we're dealing with Mother's Day. And when we begin to deal with Mother's Day, let's go to another chapter. Chapter 23, verse 3 of our Moorish Holy Quran. And chapter 23 of our Moorish Holy Quran, it tells us, prepare him early with instruction and season his mind with the maxims of truth. Watch the bent of his inclination and set him right in his youth, and let no evil habit gain strength with his years. Now, we're talking about the woman because the woman is the first teacher. The woman is the first teacher. In order for the Asiatic nation of North America, more so the Moorish, able to come back, it's going to have to come through the woman because she is the first teacher. Remember when you was coming up, how your mother used to blow the food and make it sure that it was warm enough for you to eat? She used to tie your shoes up so you wouldn't fall all over. So the first teacher is the woman. She teaches us all of these things, and the man takes over when the child becomes 13. When you come 13, they have something called bar mitzvah in the so-called Jew. I say so-called Jew because when I check my DNA, I am of Jewish blood. So when you begin to talk about that, then we need to look at something. We need to look at this thing that we call for the child, bar mitzvah. Because sisters, you're going to have to take charge. You're going to have to stop thinking like somebody else and think like Drew Ali taught us to think. Because Drew Ali gave us some literature. We have to understand that you have something called the Nicene Council, the Council of Nicaea. You have to understand that you know about James Stewart, who they call King James. You know about him. And you know that he is the one that killed everybody who did not accept his version of the Bible. So now what do they have to do with what I'm talking about? Because the woman is the first teacher. And you have an obligation to teach these lessons to our little ones that they may learn to love instead of hate. And if you don't teach these lessons to our little, because you can't get a brother, his job is not that. Your job as a child when they 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, put them teachings in them. And then when they become 13, then they have the understanding that they need, just like I say, Wonder Bread, build strong bodies 12 ways. But we're talking about the 13 now. Because you know 13 is the number of God's prophets. Jesus was the 13. Drew Ali was the 13 because each had 12 disciples and they was the 13th one. Now when you begin to talk about the 13, you're talking about the all-seeing eye. When you begin to talk about 13, you're talking about the Spirit of God. That's why they had only 12 floors at one time. They did not have a 13th floor. And a lot of times, we always talk about the 13. It takes you back to Friday the 13th. when they ran down on us, trying to get rid of us while we was in prayer at high noon, and they lost the war. It might have been 1453 Byzantine. So on this day right here, this is the day that our sisters need to look at themselves and say, am I a mother? Have I been a mother? Am I doing the thing that I need to do now? A brother told me when it said, honor thy father and thy mother, that thy days may be longer upon the earth land, which the Lord thy God Allah has given thee. Your father is the great God Allah. Your mother is Mother Earth. And man derives his name from the earth land. And it talks about, in this chapter number 7 in here, it say, what is the higher self? It say the higher self is the mother of virtues and the harmonies of life that breeds justice, mercy, love, and right. So sister, you got to do, and I got to do, we got to start breeding justice, mercy, love, and right. So now, I'm going to stop here and I'm going to share something with you because it was brought up to me in Sunday school and the question was asked me. A brother said that he have a family member that's marrying somebody of the same sex. And he said because they are family members, he said, Lynch-Bey, if it was you, would you go to a wedding when your daughter or your cousin or your sister is marrying somebody of the same sex? I said, nah, I wouldn't go. I wouldn't go because it's the truth that set you free. You got to teach that lesson. You cannot become a part of such. Our second principle is truth. And if you go there, that means that you are accepting that particular lifestyle. And that's what you're doing, sisters. That's why I read this. The fountain of health, which must supply the stream of pleasure, shall quickly be dried up. Now, you out to dinner now. You out to dinner. Everybody taking you out to dinner. You getting your cars today. You getting all these particular different gifts today, but you ain't even worthy of them. One of the reasons why you ain't worried about because you went to church today. You went to church today. And when you go to church today, the first thing you're doing, you're a Christian now. Noble Drew Ali told us that the foundation of Christianity began in Rome. It was the Roman nation that founded the first church, of whom crucified Jesus of Nazareth for seeking to redeem his people from under the Roman yoke and law. So that's one of the things that we got to do. We got to teach the children who they are. And if we don't do that, then we really can't talk about we love our people and desire their unity and mind. Let me share this with you. It was a sister that came to the temple not too long ago. And she wanted to become a member, as she said. But we found out later on she was just a groupie. You know how you get brothers that's playing the music industry? And in the music industry, you know, wherever they go, you know, they got that song in California. Wherever we go, he's the same old so-and-so is there. So you got the same thing in the Moorish Science Temple of America. You got sisters that come there. And they're not coming to the Moorish Science Temple of America for learning. They see brothers with suits on and wearing ties, so they're trying to come there so they can see who they can take off because they're groupies. And when they can't get you here, then they'll go somewhere else and try to get somebody else too. And that's the same thing that's taking place with our sisters in the Moorish Science Temple. Because a lot of them will come, and even some will come and become sheikhs. And the brothers will let them do that because they give them an opportunity to do the things that they need. But if you have a child and you don't bring your child up like the prophets say bring her up, then really you are not a part of that spirit. It say try the spirit, test the spirit, and see are you from the same spirit. So what we need to do, we need to remember the lesson that I gave you last week. And it was a sister that from Nigeria. And this sister was a Christian in the church. And she was talking one day about every time you go to a professional basketball game where women are, she said all you see there with the finest women that's in the world, they sitting up, hugged up with another woman. And they say that's all right. It's all right to do that because you the BGO or who, whatever that stuff is, but you already tell us something different. That's not what we're taught here in the Moorish Science Temple of America. We are taught something totally different in the Moorish Science Temple of America. And now, there was a sister. I want to share this, sister, and I need y'all to listen to it. And I need for you to look at it. There was a sister by the name of Sister Franklin Hill. And Sister Franklin Hill was an old sister, older sister, and she wore orthopedic shoes too. And she had lived on the colony in Prince George, this back in the 70s. And she had lived on the colony to Prince George, but she moved to New York City to Temple and was functioning out of Temple 21. So she came back to the colony. And when she came back to the colony, she met me. And we started talking because she was teaching me, and she was telling me a lot of things that I need to know. Her and Pearl and Sister Lynch-Bey, who was the governor, all these old sisters was right there. But Sister Franklin Hill told me, she said, Lynch-Bey, you should marry me, brother. I said, wow, she looked just like my mother, got orthopedic shoes and everything. She said, because then I can instruct your wife. Now, this was 40 years ago. Now, that don't apply to me now. That don't apply to me now because all these brothers got 2 or 3 girls. If you're over 40 years old, your health, the fountain of health, which must supply the stream of pleasure, will be trickly dried up. Because the more you give her, the more you want. We need to get you, sisters, to teach this to your sons. Teach this to your daughters while they was children. And tell them, do not get caught up in the flesh. Let me tell you what happened to me. Same sister, one of the groupies. She told me and another more, said, look at this. Look at all this that I got right here. I said, what you talking about? We all what? And she was talking about her physical body. I said, what you mean, look at this? Like, what is supposed to mean? It don't think, and it don't reason. Drew Ali said, it is not in flesh to think, and it's not in bones to reason. So if you get hung up in a particular piece of flesh, then you are somebody else, because Drew Ali said, let that spirit, oh man, actuate and direct the flesh. So now, we have to instruct the sisters, and the sisters have to instruct the babies. And what we need to understand is it might take 20, it might take 30 years, but when we come together in the sisters' auxiliary, and when we come together with the sisters' retreat, you sisters need to talk about what's going to take place for us to come back together under one vine and fig tree, because right now we're worshiping other gods other than our own. That's why the title of the lesson today is False Gods. Because you cannot serve 2 masters at the same time. You have to worship under your own vine and fig tree. And that's what we'll learn here in the Moorish Science Temple. Now, when I was coming up, you sisters, man, you had something called quindolins. You had something called girdles. And you go to the store at the end of the month or the first of the month to get those napkins. They were way under the bottom. They were way on the bottom shelf, because my second sister had me to go get hers. But when you look at that, when you really look at it, you come to find out that it's something different than what somebody else teaches. All nationalities have their own customs, their own culture, their own heritages, and their own tradition. So now it's Mother's Day. The day is Mother's Day. And all the women running around getting packages, getting presents. But the present that you really need is the same present that Jesus gave fallen humanity, the book of the 7 seals. And we need to get into this, because until you, sister, until you get yourself together, we're not going to grow, because you are our first teacher. Every time I meet a sister and I talk to her, all she wants you to do is go to France. And when you go to France, she wants you with a French tickler. She wants you to do everything that's diametrically opposed to what our forefathers did. Now look at Mary. Look at Elizabeth. When you begin to talk about Mary, sometimes they got a drink called Bloody Mary. And we get so far gone and so far away from our forefathers' divine and national principles, we take on everything, just like right here. Noble Drew Ali is lifting up the sister. He say 1 feet on land and 1 on sea. But see, he's not just uplifting the sister, he's uplifting the whole world. You know how he say he got the whole world in his hand? So Drew Ali is raising the sister, got humanity, because through her womb, humanity comes. When you uplift a brother, you uplift an individual. But when you uplift the sister, you uplift the nation, because through her womb, humanity comes. So now it is on you. You are the first teacher. When in Sunday school, you got to teach these things to our little brothers and to our little sisters, the things that you don't do. Because, man, I see some things up here so bad. I see people walking down the street, and you might see two people of the same sex. And they're walking down the street, and they got a little boy there, and they have a little girl there. And their titles is husband and wife. Well, both of them got the same demonstration, whatever that demonstration is. And when you see that, it's affecting the child. It's affecting the child mindset. The child, now just like in the Boy Scouts, they're not even calling it Cub Scouts or Boy Scouts anymore. They just calling it Scouts. And the reason why they're just calling it Scouts, because you can go in. You can go, if you're a Girl Scout, you can go over there with the boys. And if you're the Boy Scout, you can go over there with the girls. And the reason why you could do that is because of your mindset. They say your mindset, your mind is like you're a woman. And, or your mind is like you a man, even though your biological makeup is something different. I remember there was a homosexual named Grace Jones, and everybody was hiding, looking and laughing at me. So when I met Grace Jones, hey, Lynch-Bey, and I say, hey, and I was telling this person that certain things that I don't do, because certain things man don't do. And he said, well, when I was growing up, I didn't know who I wanted to be. I didn't know if I wanted to be a woman or if I didn't know if I wanted to be a man. And I say, well, I had that same problem too, Grace Jones. And Grace Jones asked me, said, how did you come to the realization that you was a man and not a woman? I said, well, my mother in her house, she had a big old mirror right by the bathroom door and by my bedroom door in the back room. And up there was a big mirror. And I took all my clothes off. And I stood in that mirror. And when I stood in that mirror, I looked down and seen that demonstration. So I know what I had to be. And I had to be that because it is not in flesh to think. And it's not in bones to reason. So when we do these things, we say it's in the body. It don't have nothing to do with the body. It has something to do with your mind. And we create these things. And God ain't pleased with it. You can't serve two masters at the same time. You got to love one and despise the other. And what we are doing, we're taking on other people's concepts. We're letting it go. We're agreeing with it. When we need to stand up and represent our forefathers. You know how you got ball, right now they got the ball games playing. And you got Boston and you got this other team, and they have a lot of championship banners. And we have championship banners too. And we have championship banners that's up in our genealogy. And who are there? Abraham, Boaz by Ruth, Jesse, King David, Solomon, Hezekiah, and Joseph by Mary. So these are our forefathers. These are they of whom we trace ourselves at. We got a brother. Abraham had a nephew. And his nephew's name was Lot. And Lot is the brother that led the people out of Sodom and Gomorrah. You talking about sodomy? You talking about sodomite? Now, I don't like talking like this, but this is the Moorish voice. This is not the black voice. This ain't the colored voice. And this ain't the Negro voice. So when you become Negro, colored, and black, you take on all those concepts because somebody gave it to you. Act 7 of our divine constitution and bylaw. It says, all members must properly attend their meetings and become a part and a parcel of all uplifting acts of the Moorish Science Temple of America. Members must pay their dues and keep in line with all necessities of the Moorish Science Temple of America. Then you are entitled to the name of faithful. Husband, you must support your wife and children. Wife, you must obey your husband, take care of your children, and look after the duties of your household. Sons and daughters must obey father and mother and be industrious and become a part of the uplifting of fallen humanity. All Moorish Americans must keep their hearts and minds pure with love and their bodies clean with water. This divine covenant is from your holy prophet Noah Jew Ali through the guidance of his father, God Allah. So now, Jew Ali brought us something different. He brought us back our forefathers, divine and national principles. He told us something about David. He told us something about Solomon. He told us something about Ruth. He told us something about Boaz. He told us something about Abraham. And when you join the Moorish Science Temple of America, you have taken on the same spirit that Abraham took on. What do I mean? Abraham wasn't always Abraham. He first was Abram, and then he became Abraham. And he became Abraham when he found grace in the eyes of God. So when you take on an ill, or when you take on a bay, you saying that your earth task is no longer in manifest, and that you are somebody different now. You are living another life, just like when you begin to talk about the prodigal son. And the prodigal son, who we talking about man and woman. When the prodigal son left his mother's house, left his father's house, and went out into the world. We apply that to ourselves. All of us that didn't live a moral and clean life, did not do the things that God said do, then we left our father's house, because your father is Allah. And Allah is the father of love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. So you left the principles of love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice going out into the world. And when you go out into the world, you look for hatred, slander, lewdness, murder, theft, and everything that harm, which are the attributes of Lucifer, Satan, devil, dragon, and beast. So Jew Ali came to the lost tribes of Israel in this era of time. But in this era of time, we are known as Moorish Americans. We're known as Moorish Americans because when you begin to talk about the slave trade, or when you begin to talk about the northwestern and the southwestern shores of Africa, this is from which we come. And man, I don't like talking like this. I don't like talking like this because you got so many people that frown up when I talk like this. But you know that I got to do it. This is my life story. This is the Moorish voice. And all of us that does that, we know it ain't right. We know it ain't right. We know that it's not in flesh to think. We know that these things that we take on, we done grab from somebody else. Look at the book. Look at all religious books. And when you look at the religious book, it's your book anyway. Because see, Allah blessed us. Allah blessed us when he gave us Abraham. When you begin to talk about Abraham and check the genealogy of these, then that's you and me. But now we black. All of our brothers and sisters that went to college, finished college, got a lot of different degrees, their religion is Christianity. And they call themselves Negro, colored, and black. Now, on my birth certificate, it had Negro until I had it changed. Even on Jew Ali's birth certificate, it had Negro until it got changed. But man today is what his forefathers were yesterday. And if you take on those attributes, see, when you call yourself Negro, colored, and black, you're taking on a spirit that's not yours. Because you are not worshiping under your own vine and fig tree. You're calling yourself something that you are not. This is why Jew Ali had to come to bring us a nationality to hook us back up with the family of nations. So we have a responsibility, sisters. You are the first teacher. You got to teach our people the truth about themselves. That's your blessing for Mother's Day. That's the present I want to give you on this Mother's Day. And what you have to do, sister. Now, you have a male socket and you have a female socket. When you put the male socket and when you put the female socket together, the female socket is the one that has the electricity in it. Let me reiterate that. The female socket is the one that has the electricity in it. But in order for a light to come on, you have to take that male socket, stick it into that female socket, and then humanity comes. Now, you know what it says? It said, be fruitful, multiply, and replenish the earth. all of those that come up around my time or before me, all the mothers and fathers had 13 and 14 children. They had 13 and 14 children. And when I was a child, all the men that I knew that was married, they was loyal, they was faithful. They bring the paycheck home in the evening and give the paycheck to the wife. And the wife, what she do? She pay all the bills and then give him enough money that he needs to carry him through the rest of the week. He could do that because when he come home, he in the house. He not outside ripping and running, trying to find the things that he could get into. And we got to understand from which we come. We're not the same as everybody else. You have Chinese. I seen the news today. And when you look at the news, they had the President Trump on that. And he was talking about the brothers that just got released, the 3 that just got released from over there. But when I looked at the people that Trump got released, I'm looking at them, and the people that had them locked up look just like them. They the same people, the same genealogy, the same bloodline. So, man, what is going on? What's going on right now? But you know what it is? Because the day you have Mother's Day, it's, what you call that? Mental slavery. Because we are taking on some things. We're taking on concepts that we know that's not a part of us. My mother, she told me 2 things that I'm going to share today because it's Mother's Day. She told me that if you ever get into a relationship, always put your woman before me. My mother told me that. She also told me that there's certain things that transpire once you get into the sex world. She said, don't partake in them. She said, keep your head. Don't give it up. And right now, the world is so messed up because most of the brothers lost their head. This is why your woman tell you, sleep on the couch. You just paid all the bills. That's not what we had when I was growing up. I never seen the McCoy family, the Ware family. There was a lot, the Jordan family. There was a lot of families in my neighborhood that the father and the mother was there because my father passed on. I've never seen Miss McCoy or Miss Jordan or Miss Alice. I never seen these sisters talk back to their husband because it was a different type of spirit. It was the spirit of God. Now, nigga, I make just as much money as you. You can't tell me this. You can't tell me that, because they came in the home. When you start getting welfare, your man couldn't stay there. So this is where the disrespect come about. Now he doing all these different crazy things for you, and the more you give him, the more he want, and then he gets 70 years old. And when he gets 70 years old, he can't do nothing. He running around, and it's your fault. Because you want more and more and more and more, and the more you give him, the more he wants. What's wrong with you? What is wrong with your body? This is not what Mary would have done. This is not what Elizabeth have done. When you talk about Mary and Elizabeth, these was women of the cloth. These was women that lived a moral and clean life. These are they that followed Jesus. These are they that followed all of God's prophets. Now, we're here in the Moorish Science Temple of America. I love this because in the Moorish Science Temple of America, there's only a few. Drew Ali said there's only a few going to be saved. And he said you can count them on one hand and still have fingers left over. And what is he telling us? When you begin to talk about building a temple, a perfected man, these are attributes. You have to grow. You have to elevate. There were 7 tests that Jesus went through. And when Jesus passed the 7th test, he became the Christ. The Christ is a title. Everybody can't reach that plane, but Jesus said, what I've done, all men can do. And what I am, all men can be. So right now, a sister told us not too long ago, she said, hey, bring the brothers over to the temple, over to the church, because we got a lot of sisters in there. You can't take a brother by the church. Because if you take a brother by the church, 2 things going to take place. You're going to get them in the European concepts, or you're going to bring them home. And there's going to be some confusion because you can't serve two masters at the same time. A family that pray together, stay together. But we all know in the Bible, it talks about the lamb's wool. It tells you about all these things, and it tells you about the Nicene Council, the Council of Nicaea, when they came together to interpret our literature and what Jesus supposed to have said. Same thing with walking on water. Chapter 17 tell you walking on water means rising above the things of the world. So, sister, the European holiday today is Mother's Day. And I know you didn't go to the temple today. You say that you're Moorish American and you're a good sister and that you love the prophet. But Drew Ali say, really? He said you can't even consider yourself a Moor if you don't attend your meetings and keep in line with all necessities of the Moorish Science Temple of America. We're talking about a spirit now. So we are in this era of time. And let me show you this. See the 7 right here? 7 is a number of perfection. You and I are the 7. 7 is the number of perfection, and we trying and striving hard to become the 7. But let me read something to you. Brother Lynch-Bey, a member of our temple, was talking in the Holy Day Friday about the dietarian law. We were talking about the dietarian law, and because we took him to Leviticus, and we're showing him in Leviticus when they talk about the hoofs and everything. But you know what Drew Ali did, sister? And I'm going to give you this lesson. Drew Ali told us about chapter 11. And he said that men in his other shameless strikes down and eat the beast. Now, I was in a meeting with a lot of people that was around with the prophet. And they was talking about the sister and telling the sister about the lesson in chapter 11 about man in his other shameless strikes down and eat the beast. And Drew Ali was telling the brothers and the sisters they need to get off of the flesh. And I used to hear it taught, I don't hear it taught no more, that a sister might eat meat maybe every other week or twice a month or 3 times a month. Because what is taking place is once a month we have what is known as a cycle. And the sister goes on the cycle. Now this ain't European, this is Asiatic, so you need to listen at it. And I'm not in the Remus and Remus up in the caves. I'm not in there. See, we're not talking about that. But the reason why a sister during her period, she cramps a lot. You got to cramp is because of the animal blood that's inside of your body. And this animal blood that's inside of your body, the human blood and the animal blood is at war. And when it's at war because of that human blood, that animal blood that's within you, you cramp. So try it, sister, because the sister taught that in the time of the prophet. If you don't eat meat, say 7 days before you come on your cycle, those of you that eat meat, I guarantee you that it would be a lot better, and you won't cramp as much, is because the animal blood that's within you is not there. When we come up, our people will fix our food, and when we want our meat well done. But because of Remus and Ramus up in them caves, today, when you go to a restaurant and you see people eating in there, the food they got blood dripping out. The only thing I knew when I was coming out about blood dripping out, you might have a dog. If you have a dog, you want to make your dog mean. And how do you make your dog mean? You make your dog mean by giving him some bloody meat and some gunpowder. If you give him some bloody meat and some gunpowder, it'll make him more vicious. So that's what makes you and me more vicious, because we're eating all that flesh and eating this flesh because look at your teeth. Really? I'm just saying I'm guilty too. But this is not of our forefathers. You know, you used to see pictures of Mary and Joseph and all the people back in the ancient days of the biblical times, and what do you see? You don't see flesh nowhere. All you see is fruit. That's why I say be fruitful and multiply and replenish the earth. So, sister, we always talk about us coming together as a people, overcoming. What you have to do is on the sister. The sister is the first teacher. And you done turn the brother out so much, see, you done turn him out that you're going to have to redo this. You have to, baby, you know, I just studied my literature, and in studying my literature, I found out that we shouldn't be doing this. This is not something that we're supposed to do. So it says, teach him this, teach him that, prepare him early with instructions. And all this is on you, sister. You got to go back and start teaching our babies and telling them the things that they know to make, because we got to plan 20 and 30 years from now. And there's some things that need to be taught. Now, I heard that over there they're talking, the sisters are sitting down and they're putting curriculum together for the children, you know, so we can come up and write, because right now, Rome got the whole world locked down. Look at it. Everybody is taking on all these different concepts and ideologies. We're taking on things that had nothing to do with our forefathers. Charity begins at home. Home is where the spirit is. Home is where the heart is. Our forefathers, our mothers, our grandmothers are turning over in their graves. They said, look what have happened to a clean and pure nation. So today is Mother's Day. I'd like to give honor to all of the women. I'd like to give honor to all of you, those of you that's doing what God say do. I honor my mother because of the life that she lived. If she didn't live that life, I wouldn't even honor her, because Jesus said, if my mother ain't right, she can't get in the kingdom of heaven. And that's what we do. We know our family is doing this. We know our family is doing that, but we accept that because they're supposed to be family. But if you're talking about the body of God, we're talking about those that live according to the law of God. So right now, I'm honored. I'm honored to be able to come by here today and talk to you on this Mother's Day, because I didn't have a big bowl of flowers, or I didn't have a jar of peanut butter for you. But what I want to do now is say it's an honor, a pleasure, moreover a duty. I'm honored to be able to come before you, our Portland listening audience, to talk about the last prophet in these days and time, Prophet Noble Drew Ali. So I'm going to close out, and I'm going to close out with the Moorish American prayer. See, every prophet brought a prayer. Drew Ali brought us a prayer. He didn't bring us the Fatiha. He brought us the Moorish American prayer. Now, you got a lot of brothers say the Fatiha, but say the Lord's Prayer too, because that's Jesus' prayer. But Drew Ali brought us the Moorish American prayer, the source from which we draw our strength. Allah, the Father of the universe, the Father of love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. Allah is my protector, my guide, and my salvation, by night and by day, through his holy prophet, Drew Ali. Amen. Drew Ali came for me, had me on his mind. I'm so glad he came for me. I'm so glad he came for me. And I'm so glad he came for me.